what the actual fuck? Infuriating. Pretty sure you just heard me whispering there. Yeah, I'm just upset at the construction going on outside the window at the moment. They literally just came over and started chatting just on the other side of the window. And you can hear them banging about out there. So it's just what I'm going to have to deal with until this is good to go. Additionally, my keyboard is not working. So I'm just having a grand moment. But I'm about to go live right here on the Quiet Storm. I mean, the Eternal Chronicles. All right, I'm live. And so is the construction on the other side over there. If you're watching the beginning slideshow, you heard me with a hot mic get a little upset at the that. So good times, but it'll be over soon. Everything comes and goes in its time, right? So and the good thing is that hopefully when this is all done, there won't be rainwater leaking into my apartment. So it's one of those things you just kind of have to deal with while you carry on trying to move forward with this. So what is this? Well, welcome to the Eternal Chronicles Live. If you watched yesterday, you probably have a decent idea of what it is that I'm doing. If not, well, I guess you're in for finding out what it is that I'm doing. So what am I doing? I paint, I talk about painting, talk about other things, anything really. You can reach me best probably through the YouTube live chat, because I am streaming on YouTube. So if you're out there and you're watching, but it doesn't look like really anyone's watching right now. If you are and you're watching, then Sorry, it took me a couple minutes to get things set up there. I was having problems. Trading me old goblins. Who is the Jank Master? I don't know who the Jank Master is, but someone's trading me old goblins. I don't know what that means. Maybe the Jank Master can explain themselves. Hopefully the sound is good. I can pull in a little bit to the mic here and adjust my lumbar support on my chair so I can sit and paint and adjust my armrests. Here comes some cracking sound. That's just my armrests coming in. I'm gonna. So they're jackhammering. So this is fantastic. So what I may end up doing is just painting and turning the volume down. So this is my life right now. So hopefully that doesn't sound too absolutely awful. Anyways, I'm gonna switch to the overhead here, and yeah, we'll see what the what all hubbub is. So this is what I was painting yesterday briefly, and you can see it's got the Agrax shade over the gold, and that looks pretty awesome. Essentially now I just have to dry brush a little bit of gold on there, a little bit of silver on there, and then I will seal it up. The back is a disaster, so I'm actually just going to repaint over the back. I got some feedback yesterday that was apparently I wasn't zoomed in enough. So I've extra zoomed in today so that hopefully this shows up really good on camera. And it looks good, you guys. What are you doing? You're trading me cool old models. Look into my eyes. I don't know who the Jank Master is, but if you want old goblins, you're barking up the wrong tree, because I tend to hoard old goblins. I don't let old goblins go unless I've got too many goblins, and you can never have too many goblins. So Jank Master, I'm not really sure what you're on about or after, but if it's goblins, you're barking up the wrong mushroom. All right, so what I am actually going to be doing today, I like that you can see my fingers, you can see my horrible fingernails there, is I'm going to be talking about Escher some more, because that's what I'm working on. I'm working on Necromunda, which is hence the coin, hence the tentacle, and hence my gang. So as I was saying yesterday, this is Briar, Mistress of Thorns. She is my gang queen, so my gang leader for my Escher gang. And with her beautiful headdress there and her beautiful bionic eye. And I'm looking at the camera and I'm looking at the placement, and this looks a lot better. This looks like you can really see the detail. Introduced to your cool models from GMG videos. Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, I love GMG. My buddy Ash over there. I've known Ash for going on 20 years now. So it's great to get together with him and play. And I'm glad you like my old goblins. I have a lot more of them. I'm going to be doing, I've got some videos in the pipeline, some pre-recorded stuff that will showing off the stuff that's in my cabinet. And on the second shelf of the cabinet, so down here, you can kind of see it peeking in there, is the Growla, which is the name of my siege tower, and my Orc and Goblin army, my old Orc and Goblin armies, not old models. It's actually stuff that I painted within the last year, within this year of 2020. It was painted. A lot of it was acquired from my previous Orc and Goblin army, so a lot of that was repainted stuff, repurposed. A lot of it has been acquired over the last year. Was acquired back in. I will shut up, but just for procuring some C-Series Gobos. Dude, if I have C-Series Gobos, I'm not trading them, man. I'm sorry. I do have some C-Series Gobos. I have a few C-Series Gobos. But yeah, I'm not in the market for getting rid of C-Series Gobos at the moment. But what I am talking about today is Escher. And I talked about this briefly yesterday, how these Escher, so here, these Escher, which were painted for a Necromunda campaign we did back like 2 years ago. So these are my two Juves, and this is one of my gangers here. And then I've got a bunch of other gangers, which I will show you at some point. I've got a bunch of unpainted ones because my starting gang for the Necro campaign we're going to be doing this year, or late this year, early next year, depending on how the universe is turning. They're mostly unpainted, so I've got to repaint or I've got to paint up a bunch more gangers and stuff. But I thought what I would do, and I dug them out, is I would show you my original Escher gang that this gang, I based their paint scheme on. So I initially took photos of these back in the 90s. I had a big photo shoot and shot all of my most of my collection, a large chunk of my collection at the time. And I still have all the negatives, so I have to scan the negatives and get them online. But one day they will be in the gallery. But these are them now, and you can see they're in rough shape because these are gaming pieces, so they've been well used over the years, over the decades. Because you're talking, these are probably painted 25 years ago, roughly. Most of this gang was painted the weekend the Escher box was released. So they are, and then some of them, like my gang leader, was painted a little bit later because she came out a little bit later. So this is not the gang leader that comes in the Escher box. I don't care for that gang leader. I think she had a las pistol and a bolter. It wasn't a very cool model, but this model was awesome. But she did have an auto pistol. So I swapped out her auto pistol for a plasma gun, because what gang leader wouldn't have a plasma pistol, and a power sword. So this is my original gang leader from my Escher gang way back in the day. Pretty awesome. I mean, they're dusty, they're dirty, they're chipped. Lots of chips, lots of battle damage. But they're still my Escher. You can hear the construction guys outside. They don't give a shit what I'm doing in here. So there we go. So old leader, new leader. And my new leader's previous head, I mentioned yesterday that I had swapped out her head, and this was her third head. Her previous head to this had the similar sort of mohawk ponytail as this one, so that was kind of my homage to that. But I much prefer the headdress. I love the new aesthetic of the Escher. I love their whole thing. And so I'll get into old Necromunda, and you can see up on my bookshelf up here, there's two copies of Necromunda. There's the Necromunda from most recently and an older copy of Necromunda. That is not my original copy of Necromunda. That is lost to time, except for I think some of the books and some of the tokens I still have. I'll show you some more of these. So I'll show you my heavy here. This is one of my two heavies. This one with the stub gun. Pretty awesome. I did, this is old Space Wolf Gray that I rimmed the bases with. And I'm not really sure why I did that, but I think it looks cool. And I actually did all my scum like that too, because I'll pull down, here's Templeton. Templeton the Rat Skin. And if you know where I got that name from, then you had a pretty good childhood, I imagine. So there we go. All right, so what do we got here? We got some work in the chat. So I'm trying to monitor everything. Okay, Necromunda away then. I will. Do you have any old gangs or just new plastics? Awesome. Who did those sculpts? Were those guys made around the same time as 3rd edition Dark Eldar? They look similar. No, they predate 3rd edition Dark Eldar by a considerable number of years. And these are sculpted by Jess Goodwin, who is probably the most technically sound sculptor out there. My personal favorite sculptor is Kev Adams, because, here, this is why I like Kev Adams. Yeah, that's the stuff. But Jess Goodwin is an extremely close second, and Jess Goodwin's probably, between Jess Goodwin and John Blanche, I think those two sort of were the most responsible for the miniature and art direction of Games Workshop through this period of time that we're sort of in now, which would be, this is mid-90s for the Escher. So let's, I love some of these old Escher models. They're fantastic. This one with two swords, it's got an eye patch. And you can see how I've sort of carried on the paint scheme. It's evolved, definitely. Very, very different in terms of how I paint models than what I did back then. Back then it was a lot of layering, some blending, but mostly layering. And then, there's a nice big chip on her knee. Let's pull out. Here we go. Here's another ganger with an auto gun. And they're covered in dust because I think these were in a case that was under a bed for many, many years. you know, and I love this model actually. I really like her face and her pose. I like the braids coming down over her eyes. I just like everything about these Escher, and I'll tell you why I like Escher. So this sort of segues into a popular recent topic, which is the Dune movie that's coming out. At the time, this would have been mid '90s. I think Necromunda was '95 or '96. It was after the first time I got fired from Games Workshop, so I want to say '94, '95. Do you dust them with compressed air or a paintbrush? And Jankmaster, you are correct. Yes, that's where Templeton comes from, because he's a rat skin. And yeah, cleaning models. I could do a whole video on cleaning them. Honestly, the best thing to clean models, dish soap, because it busts grease, right? So it just creates. And you want a soft brush toothbrush and a little bit of dish soap, and you just run them under some warm water and give them a gentle scrub, and let them dry, and they will look as good as new. Oh, this Juve used to have a hand flamer. That hand flamer is gone. She had a Space Marine hand flamer, which were absolutely huge at the time. And we got another Juve here. Love the Juves. Juves are fantastic. I'm waiting for GW to put Juves, put up plastic Juve models for the gangs. Actually, you can kind of get away with it. Like, these are my new Juves, right? And it's just like, you just keep it simple, right? Sword and a pistol, off you go, earn your place in the gang. Here's another Juve from my '95 crew. And here is another ganger who has received a las pistol that has not been painted, so I'm not sure when that upgrade occurred, but that's kind of funny that she has a different pistol now than what she had. I think this is the one that had the plasma pistol, and I think I took the plasma pistol off this one to give to her, but she had a different pistol in the meantime, so I'm pretty sure she had a stub pistol, and I may have updated it to a las pistol. Maybe it's a hotshot las pistol, who knows. And then what else we got? Another one here. This is one of my favorites by far. One of my favorite just gangers. Sword and auto pistol, classic Escher combo. Good times. And then my last heavy. So here's my last heavy, which is the plasma gun. I always use it as a plasma gun. I think in the catalog and in the book, they call it a plasma... heavy plasma, but I had one heavy and I wanted a special. So, and back in the day, in old Necromunda, your heavies could carry your special weapons as well. So I think unless you got a ganger upgraded, because back then everyone got skills and everyone upgraded. Gangers upgrade differently in new Necromunda and in an awesome way. And then I'll pull out one more scum here. So this is the other scum that would often accompany my Escher, and his name was Joe Ball. And Joe Ball is pretty awesome. And this is the first time I think I ever painted nipples on a model. And they look rather engorged. So he's got, yeah. So what do you got going on in the chat? Do you dust it? I have so many dusty dark angels. Thanks for the tip. Yeah, that's the best way to clean them. So I have one more thing in here that I want to show you, but it's kind of a sad show because I think I lost her arm. And this is Mad Donna Eulanti, and I took a Goliath head and glued a Goliath head to the bottom there. You can see the blood coming out of it. Freshly cut. She had a plasma pistol arm, which has gone missing, and I wrote Man-Eater on her chainsword, and that makes sense because she's Mad Donna. And yeah, so if I ever find the bit for her, then I can restore her. There's a couple of other interesting models in here that aren't actually Necromunda. Maybe I'll save them for another day. Maybe I'll show them. Maybe I'll like briefly flash them up on screen. Oh, who's that? I don't know. He's pretty cool. But I'm gonna get back to Escher, so I gotta put all these Escher away. I should have, And then so I'm just construction outside, but I'm determined to power through this. If they come back and they start like jackhammering, I may have to cut the stream because it's actually so bad I have to turn the air filter on because concrete dust actually starts coming through the wall. I think it's because they're literally jackhammering against the wall. They're pulling out all the bricks that were out there and replacing with concrete. Because I talked about this yesterday, but basically there was flooding because the landscapers didn't grade the landscaping outside properly, so all the water was draining this way. So I've got 3 people watching. Awesome. Looks like I got Valere in the chat, and I got the Jankmaster in the chat. My Figs has about 10k of Madonna if you'd like one. Really? Oh, your FLGS has 10k of Madonna. That's a pretty cool FLGS if they've got Madonnas in blisters or whatever. So let's see here. Looks like shadow gray. You might be right, Valera, that it's shadow gray. The current day equivalent to it that I would use is there's an army painter, and I think it's called shadow gray. I don't know. So what am I going to do? Well, I want to finish off my gang leader. So you can see I did her face yesterday. I did that eye. I have to do the bionic eye there. And I have to finish off her headdress and then the thorns on the back here, which I'm going to do in silver, but I think I'm going to like green so you can see how I kind of, well, I'll show you actually on, let me drag the model out here. I'll drag out one of my gangers from my previous gang, or not my previous gang, my current gang. But previously painted. These were painted about 2 years ago. And you can see on the bottom here, I kind of did like a little greeny, it doesn't really show up on camera there, but you can see that's the poison feed, that's the toxin feed for the blade. So what I might actually do with her, with her is paint the little thorns on her braids here, I guess, or they're almost like dreadlock, like I guess they're like wraps. Yeah, you can. So I hope you enjoy their conversation up there, because I do every day. Not bitter, just, you know, hammering, hammer, hammer, hammer. I can see that like peaking my my audio. It's fantastic. They did a recent re-release of that Madonna Mini. Really? Cool. Well, Jankmaster, I don't know where your FLGS is, but if you were to grab me one, I don't know, send it to me, you know. Anyways, so yeah, so I'm going to do that like that. I'm going to do some kind of like green tipped, and then I'm going to finish off her antlers and her face. So I'm going to start with some metal. And I'm going to start with some dark metal. Now, I had my paints all nice and organized. And then, of course, I painted. And once I paint for, you know, 10, 15 minutes, my paints are no longer organized. And I've got this little piece of plastic card here that I'm going to use as a palette. That is not the right color. It was the one beside it. So I'm just going to use this for now. I'm not going to bust open my wet palette at the moment, just because of what I want to do. And I've got models all over the top of my wet palette. I guess I can. So now the compromise here, the compromise here with the camera being more zoomed in, is you don't get to see what I'm doing on my palette necessarily, which I don't know if that's a big deal. I don't know if that really matters, but it makes me feel self-conscious. So I'm just going to prime my brush here, get it ready to go. Grab some of this bolt gun metal. It's actually gun metal from Army Painter. And I can't leave it there because otherwise I'm going to put my hand on it. So I'm just going to push it up here. I've got Necromunda bits sitting up here because I was filing off nubs and cleaning these for reasons. So you know what? I'm just going to put this over here on my wet palette and be done with it. So, and I could do these gold, but I kind of think I want them to be silverish because I do, like I said, I want to add a green tint to them, so they almost look like they're poisoned. Whoops. That was not me. That was not the sound of me dropping. That was the sound of something outside. I just realized that it happened at the exact same time I dropped the model, so it sounded like she really took a hard fall. So I don't know what's going on. That's okay. So I was going to talk about Escher, and I was going to talk about Dune, and I was going to talk about why I chose Escher. So back when Necromunda first came out, my buddy Nico and I split the box. And he took the Orlocks and I took the Goliaths. I didn't want the Goliaths, but he wanted the Orlocks, so I took the Goliaths. And we played a bunch of games. What I wanted were the models that they had previewed in White Dwarf, because this is pre-internet for Games Workshop, certainly. So if you wanted to see what was happening, you had to have White Dwarf. And in the Necromunda rulebook, they had pictures as well of. So as you can see, I'm just kind of dropping paint on the little thorns here, coming out of her. So you had to have and in there they had Escher, and there was a whole like write up of the different houses and the previews for on White Dwarf. So I was super hyped for the Escher, and that's because at the time I was reading Dune. I was reading the Dune series, and my favorite faction, my favorite group, my favorite powerful entity in Dune are the Bene Gesserit. They basically run the whole thing. They run the whole universe in secret, behind closed doors. They're just awesome. If you have not read the Dune books and you only know the Bene Gesserit through like the Dune, the Dune movie, the David Lynch movie, or the Dune miniseries, or just sort of osmosisly through consuming information about Dune online, it doesn't belie how cool the Bene Gesserit are, and just how like powerful and manipulative and just utterly fearless to go out into the universe, which is just, not a it's full of people with extreme skill and talent at these like high levels, and it just shows like how populaces can be manipulated, how ideologies can be manipulated. Dune is deep, man. To say that it's a book that sort of changed my life is an understatement, because it changed the way that I looked at the world in a big way. So if you have not read Dune, and I'm assuming that we're going into full-on Dune, hopefully that looks good. I'm practicing with the new super zoom going on here, and hopefully that looks all right. So got all the little spikes on the back there. I med you on Facebook. Send me your address back to work for me. All right, Jankmaster. Awesome. Thanks. I will. I'll talk to you on the old Facebook. Yeah. Awesome. Always nice to have a fan. So yeah. So you know what I'm gonna do with some of this gunmetal, and I'm gonna grab some of my. So this is my favorite Retributor gold. It's just such a nice rich gold, and you can use it to mix with almost anything. So I'm actually going to mix it here with a tiny, tiny bit of this gunmetal, yeah, which kind of dirties it up a bit. I actually think I should probably be using silver for this, but I just kind of want to touch up here a bit because it looks like just to get around that gold, to sort of make that gold pop out a little bit more. Hopefully that shows up on camera. Hopefully that shows up on camera, and the power tools that you hear 5 feet away from me on the other side of this wall don't. But I can see that they do, because I can see it. Yeah, I can see it in my audio mix. Fantastic. But you know what? It'll be done one day. Construction here has been feels like forever, but it's been about 2 years, because they decide on the outside. 2 years ago, they started to replace all of the balconies on the building to make the building look nicer from the outside, because it's an older building. It's probably built in the 50s. It's like definitely feels post-war, baby boomer, everybody live in apartment buildings sort of idea. All right, so now I'm going to wash those. And I'm going to wash them with a little bit of my typical wash here. So I've got some dark tone left over from yesterday sitting in my palette. You can see it there. I'll push it back over here just because maybe that'll work. I'm going to add a tiny little bit of strong tone and use that mix of dark tone and strong tone. So strong tone, drop in some of that dark tone. And I'm just going to go back over what I just painted, so the metallics. So this is to add shadow, depth, make it look a little bit more realistic. So it looks less like metallic paint and more like an actual metal. So under there, get back there, hit it from this side. Sometimes accessing parts of the model, knowing how to access part of a model you're trying to paint is a talent unto itself. Understanding sort of like, hey, this thing's all the way over here, but if I stick my brush in here, I might get paint or I don't want it. And I can already see that I've got some like exposed gray here because these wraps that are on her head were basically just painted gray, and then I black contrast, so black Templar contrast, watered down a little bit so that they kind of popped out. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I can see, I'm going to go hit them with some contrast again later, not right now. Right now I'm painting these thorns. Yeah. Want to make sure that I get the wash to sit nicely on the metal, so it provides also a nice shadow from where they meet the braids, or whatever we're calling them, the wraps. I like these because I like the thorns on them. That's kind of what inspired her name. I was just going to call her Briar Rose, and then my friend was like, you can't do that because of Sleeping Beauty. And I was like, okay, I guess you're right, I can't do that because of Sleeping Beauty. You know, I mean, any reason to not be derivative is good enough reason for me. So I just went with Briar, and then I was like, well, Briar's kind of dull, so what can we do with that? And I said, oh, she's got these cool thorn things coming out of her. She's got this cool headdress. Let's call her Briar, Mistress of Thorns. And there we go. So that's pretty simple stuff. Hopefully that looked okay on camera. Again, this painting on camera is complicated. I'm going to leave her there. I'm going to grab my Black Templar contrast here. Contrast paints are cool. I wouldn't use them to paint an entire model unless I absolutely, positively had to paint that model in an extremely quick, rapid amount of time, which I may end up doing for something Necromunda related later on. So I'm just adding some more, whoops, keep that on camera, and it's adding some more the Black Templar contrast to her braids to sort of help. Yeah. And then I'll probably have to go back over those. They look pretty good. I like them black. I like they're just, it's probably just like black rope or black cloth wrapped around her hair. They're giant extensions. Let's just call them what they are. And that's from the Death Maiden kit. There's another one that's braids, but I use that on my Death Maiden. It's this one here. So there's another bit that I could have used there, which is these braids, which might have looked better on her, but I like the thorns, right? And these are cool too. These might have been more gang leader-ish, but I think it makes my Death Maiden, who I named... Well, I can get into that. So the cool thing about the new Necromunda, the cool thing about old Necromunda too, is that all your guys, all your gangers, gain experience, get new weapons, get develop skills, get better at fighting over time, if they survive the brutal Underhive warfare, right? So in old Necromunda, you'd have a gang sheet and stuff, and in new Necromunda, you have a gang sheet as well, but it's not where all your information's kept. All your information's actually kept on these. Whoops. Well, that brush is gone. All right. Yeah, so that's these. And because I'm so zoomed in here, it's hard to see. But these are the gang cards. So I could probably zoom out just a tiny bit. So you'll have to pardon the tremors as I zoom out a bit. There we go. So here she is, Briar, Mistress of Thorns. She's my gang queen. She cost me 275 credits. Here's all her stats. Here's her weaponry. Mastercraft stiletto sword. I gave her the step aside skill to start. She's got a chem synth and she's got mesh armor. That's her code, right? What do I need to pick up alongside a gang? Well, you need the gang, and you probably need the gang cards if you can get them. You need a copy of the rules, and if the Necromunda rulebook and the Necromunda Gangs of the Underhive book. So those two books, if you can get your hands on the older softback ones, the gang fight books, I think they're called gang war books. If you can get your hands on those, then I'm gonna stop clicking my nails. You can get your hands on those. That's an okay to start, but definitely the hardcover Necromunda rulebook, which is this bad boy here. And it just says rulebook. So this does not have the rules for the gangs in it though. So the rules for actually that's the rules for playing the game and running campaigns and stuff. The actual Gangs of the Underhive book, which is over here. My Gangs of the Underhive. Oh no, this is my House of Blades. So this is the Escher House book. So if you know you're getting a specific gang, so far the two books that are out are House of Blades. You know what? If I'm gonna do this, hey, look at that. So this is the House of Blades, which is an awesome book, and it just goes deep dive into House Escher and all their operations and and what they do. Sorry, I was making gangs. I'm literally planning a campaign. So this is the Gangs of the Underhive book. So this is the book that has all the rules for actually making gangs. So the gang rules that are in here, unless you have a house book, which right now there's only two out. House of Chains is out, which is the Goliath book. House of Blades is out, which is the Escher book. And I think in November, the Orlok book, House of Iron, comes out. And then early next year will be House of Artifice, which is the Van Sar book. And then I guess they'll get around to Delac and Cawdor when they get around to Delac and Cawdor. And those books have some really cool stuff in them. Like the Goliath book has the Slave Ogre gang in it. The Escher book doesn't have a supplemental gang, but there's a lot of really other cool stuff that you can get with the Escher. Like you can get, you make allegiances with cold traders, which are basically like Voidborn traders. Does the Dark Uprising one count? So yes, the Dark Uprising rulebook is the rules for the game. I think, or it does have a copy of. It does have the core rules in there. Ogrins are in. Yes, Ogrins are in the Goliath. Or you can hire Ogrins. So there's mercenary Ogrins that you can hire, or I guess scum or hired gun Ogrins that you can hire from House of Chains. But there's also a slave Ogrin gang in there. So yeah. And then there's a bunch of other books as well. There's the Book of Ruin, which has like all your chaos stuff in it. I think your Gene Stealer cults are in there as well. They might be in the Book of Judgment. So the Book of Judgment is like your law. So this is if you want to play enforcers or you want to run a Law and Order campaign. That's the book. Book of Peril is all like the outlaw stuff and like has like bad zones and the amount of material that they're publishing for Necromunda in these large format hardcover books is fantastic. It's really, really it's becoming my favorite game, and it's easily the best game Games Workshop has published in 20 years, in my opinion. And it's the fact that it's being done sort of through Forge World is fine. I think that the initial release was a little slow. And I hope they kind of learn that lesson that they probably need to increase the release rate. But where they're at now, where they're basically releasing these house books, and I'm really looking forward to House of Iron because that's the Orlok book. And I think the rumor is, word on the street, is that the Ash Wastes Nomad gang will be in the Orlok book because the Orloks are the truckers, right? They're the ones who actually leave the hive. So they're fighting Ash Waste all the time. So, and there were some concept sketches of some Ash Waste stuff that was shown off at Warhammer Open Day a year ago at least. So I don't know, but that's just my guess. I don't really care. I've got my Escher book and I'm happy. So I'm happy with the way that book has come out, and I've literally redesigned my gang around the principle of just poisoning people on the table, and that's going to be my ideal. So I'm going to go back to overhead here. So yeah, so the cool thing is that every ganger, basically, so here's Enkidu, I just call her N. She's the daughter of Synthesis, so she's that's her. So, and she's all statted out on her card. And these cards are not just, to keep your track of your gangs, because your gangers can actually have multiple loadouts. So I could have a version of her with different weapons, depending on what sort of mission you're going on, what sort of fight you're taking. That's when you muster who's going. And sometimes it's random. So you just take your deck, and they're all the same on the back, shuffle them up, and just deal out. So these are the gangers that show up to the fight, right? So here's Quill. As I said, she's the one who's just got the needle gun and a knife, and she's got a chem synth because chem synths are useful. Natalia Heartbreak. I called her that. If you watch pro wrestling, you might get the joke there, because she kind of looks. There's a certain pro wrestler who is the certain niece or daughter of a certain wrestler who used to be a tag team partner of a certain wrestler who is considered a Canadian treasure. And he was the hitman. Anyways, so we've got Dell and Shim. That's all you need. That's all you need to name a Juve is, one syllable names. Dell and Sim, if you guys live. And then my wild runners, I've got Lori Trifling, Kipling, the tracker, and then here's Hans and Franz, which are her two Felixes. So even her cats, her two little kitty cats, get their own gang card. There we are, the Vestial Mortana. So that's what I named my Death Maiden, was the Vestial Mortana. So I guess kind of a Morgan Le Fay sort of thing, and then a Vestial thing because of the, I don't know. And then Jenny Catnip, Croft Meredith, and then a blank card. So that's what the blank cards are. You can get branded ones if you buy the Gang Tactics card thing. And this has a bunch of cards in it for use in the game. They're basically tactic cards you can play. You can earn and play. But you get a bunch of these blank cards, and the ones that come in the tactics, little tactics packs, are branded. And then you can see that these are just the unbranded ones, which you get in the core boxes. And I'm not sure where else. Hopefully that answers that question. So, yeah, the fact is that they're drilling out there. And I've got 18 minutes left in my commitment to this hour. So I'm just going to press ahead and keep painting. And hopefully the sound isn't too awful. So what are we doing here, Briar? You know what? Let's take some of that bolt gun if I've got any, if it's still viable. We'll throw some bolt gun, or some more bolt gun. Pardon my arm across the screen there as I reach for my bolt gun. One day I'll learn how to prepare this all better and be well organized and keep my mouth pointed towards the microphone so my audio doesn't fade in and out. But life is a work in progress, right? What's my old saying? Oh yeah, that's right, I lost my brush. I'm looking for that brush, and I'm like, oh, I dropped it, and I'm not going to go retrieve it right now. So I'm just going to grab a different brush. I don't know if you can hear, but Steve Miller Band is playing outside, because not only do they talk loud, not only do they jackhammer, but they've got a little radio out there, and they're playing music all the time. So you can probably hear The Joker by Steve Miller playing right now. I will say this, at least their taste in music is decent. They're playing some Tragically Hip the other day. Now I'm listening to Steve Miller, so it could be worse. It could just be reggaeton all day, all night. So now what I'm doing with the silvers, I'm just going back over the tips of... let's put this back on. Center that back on the screen, just on the tips, and then I'll even going to be hitting that with a little bit of... I'll mix some silver in to bring it up just a little bit more, and then I'm going to hit the tips with a tiny, tiny bit of some green ink, because I want it to look like she's dipped them in poison. Because I feel like that's something that an Escher gang leader would do, is she would have these spikes on her hair, and they would be poisonous. And she's probably built up an immunity to it through chemical whatever. She could probably sit there and drink this stuff all day long, and it would do nothing to her. But anyone else touches them, whack. So we'll get out some silver. So shining silver, which I'm just going to add to that gunmetal. That will... look, I can move that right over. Oh, you can't see it because I'm in the way. Whoa! Hey, look at that. So that was almost a disaster. I pulled off the cap on this, and the whole cap came off. Like the nib inside came off, and it was just exposed paint to the world. So there's a little bit of silver. We'll throw that back up there. Take our gunmetal, silver. Just a nice little mix, and then this is just literally just going to go right on the tips. Tip, tip, tippity tip, tips. Tip, 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 tip. And then what that does is that just gives you some added artificial depth to things, I suppose. I guess that's why we highlight, right? Is so that it helps to really pick out the thing here. And then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my brush after this. And I'm going to just go pure silver right on the very tips, like on the tippiest tips. Okay. So just like here and here, like that, and like that, and like that. One thing I like about going over things multiple times is that you get to see the imperfections and you can correct them as you go. So, you know, some people might go straight from bolt gun, wash, and then just go straight to silver. I like to put in an intermediary, because it's you know, it's how I sort of, my personal painting style just sort of evolved, was just blending, right? I like to blend. So I'll throw in an intermediary, and I won't go like pure to pure. But I just like to get just the, I don't know if what I'm saying is making any sense, so I'm just going to go back to painting. So there we go. So there's the tips of her thorns and stuff, and I'm going to clean my brush. So, oh, now it's Steppenwolf. Good times. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but yeah. Okay. So what am I going to use for my green wash? Well, I want it to look a little bit off green. A little bit like, so this is what I used on the blades, was I actually used a Athonian Camo Shade, which is a Citadel shade, they call it. I would just call it a wash or an ink. And so what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to put it on the tips because she's dipped the tips. So it's just a very, very subtle hint. You'll barely be able to see it once it's dry. It'll be a little bit green looking. And then the tips of these as well. So essentially I'm just washing it again. So they have this subtle green tint to them. Because, you know, all poison is green. That's just, you know, video games have taught us that if something is poisonous, it's probably green. If something is green, it's poisonous. Except vegetables. Vegetables are green. They're not poisonous. Okay. And then I'm just going to flip her around and grab it on the front here. So hopefully I'm not doing this too fast, and hopefully I'm doing this on camera. If leave me a comment or at me in the chat. Don't at me, bro. Or do at me. If you have any criticism or suggestions for how I can make the painting stream look better, I'm all ears, because this was a great learning experience trying to figure all this stuff out, and it was great to be motivated and enthusiastic about something, given how this year has gone so far, to sort of feel that enthusiasm coming out of myself for doing something like this. So yeah, so there we go. So that's the thorns done, and I may or may not go back and hit them with just like a tiny, tiny bit of straight silver. Again, just like on the tips, especially on the larger barbs at the bottom here. But I'm gonna go back to her face now, and I'm gonna grab some of my bolt gun on my brush here. Tiny brush. This is a Winsor Newton Series 7 000, but it's not. It's what's left, because I think I discussed this yesterday, how well I treat my brushes. It's what's left of a 000 of the watercolor brushes, so it has a longer bristle on it. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do her bionic eye. So being careful not to interrupt what I did or disrupt what I did with the wash yesterday. So I'm just sort of putting it over the top and leaving the black wash where the bionic eye transitions to her flesh. But it kind of comes down her face. I don't know if you can see underneath her chin there, but there's a little piece of it under there. And it kind of sticks out up at the top here. You can see the two little pieces to it. So there we go. So that's the metallic on the bionic eye. And there's 2 people watching in chat, so that's very exciting to me. 2 people watching live, I should say, not watching in the chat. So there's that. So I'm just going to take some of my dark tone, strong tone mix that I made earlier, and I'm going to hit parts of the bionic eye with it again, particularly where the bionic eye meets her forehead. It's a little bit light up there, so if I create some shadow here, you can kind of see that I just created a little bit of shadow there, and then a little bit of shadow here. It just helps to define the separation of where the there we go. So what was I talking? I was talking about Dune. I was talking about why I chose Escher. So Escher to me just seemed like really cool, and they seemed like the Bene Gesserit, and I mean not really, but kinda. They're a matriarchal society, and the models were awesome. It's the only full gang that Jess Goodwin sculpted. I think the Perrys did most of the other gangs. Maybe Brian Nelson did the Van Saar. I'm trying to remember. I know that the Perrys did Cawdor. You can tell that the Perrys did Cawdor. Perrys did Cawdor. Perrys did Orlok. Perrys might have done Goliaths. They definitely did Delac. Yeah, they did Delac. And I have a metal Delac army somewhere. Honored mates, more like. Yeah. But to me, it was just the idea of the whole. I loved the idea of the Bene Gesserit. Regardless. All right, so back to this. So now I'm going to do the deer antlers coming. Or I imagine they're not deer antlers. I imagine there's some other bizarre creature, and I want to do them fairly light. So they were painted with contrast, skeleton bone contrast. So I'm just going to go back over them with Army Painter skeleton bone. And then I will probably bring that up to my favorite highlighting color, my favorite color to use for highlighting, which is linen white, Reaper Master Series linen white. It's an off-white. You can see it there. And this bottle's almost empty, so I have to find another bottle somewhere. I think my local gaming store that carries Reaper paints does not have linen white at the moment. So I may have to go elsewhere for it, but I will sparingly use what I do have, so... I just put a little blob. You can't really see it, but I put a little blob of the skeleton bone. Yeah. And I'm going to use that now. And I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. There is no better medium than saliva. So it just allows, it gives you just the right amount of control over the viscous nature of paint. And if you're looking for some way to really control how much paint goes from your brush onto the surface you're trying to paint, I would recommend saliva anytime. And yeah, I do tend to have a bad habit of licking my paintbrush when there's paint on it, licking my paintbrush when there's no paint on it, sticking my paintbrush in my mouth at random times. I don't know. 35 years of painting. I'm going to try to not lick my brush and just put some water on my wet palette here to thin that out. And hopefully this is looking good. So you can see I've left the wash where the wash in the shadows is, and then I'm just sort of brightening up the antler parts, leaving some natural shadows there. Oh, what do we got now? Oh, Dire Straits, Sultans of Swing. I mean, at the very least, these construction workers are listening to a good radio station. If people still listen to the radio. Do people still listen to the radio? All right, Des, awesome. Yeah, I will be here Monday at the same time. So I guess in the UK, this is... it's dinner time. Because I was thinking, like, well, when am I going to do this stream? And if people think that, you know, me doing it from 12 o'clock every day, essentially the lunchtime. And I thought, well, what about the West Coast? And I said, well, I mean, what about the West Coast? West Coast will do its own thing. If I did like a nooner for the West Coast, I'd be up at, 9 a.m. Oh, no, sorry. It would be like 3 in the afternoon, which I can't do, because I have to pick up my kid from school. I meant 6 a.m. if I was going to do a nooner in the UK. But maybe I'll do that like once a month as like a special thing. Once I sort of get this whole streaming thing down and my confidence up and whatnot. Yeah. So there we go. So I've left. So that just sort of helps to clean up the antlers. And it's funny, when I look over at the screen, I can see where I need to sort of go back in and add a little bit more. So now I'm going to grab my linen white, and I'm going to put a blob of linen white beside the bone and blend the two and do the tips of those antlers. So linen white, a little bit of bone, makes a lighter color. So there we go. So now here I'm just gonna hit the tips, hit the tip, hit the tip, just the tip, just the tip. And I like this one because it's actually broken, so I kind of want to hit that. You can see that on the broken one, I sort of hit it right at the top and then didn't carry it down too far, like the highlight, because I want the break to look to stand out. So, whereas on this one, I'm gonna drag it down a little bit. Same over here, I'll drag it a little bit, just enough. And it's sort of the same with these sub ones. You want to hit them in the right spot so that the. I'm hoping you're seeing that on camera. So like right at the tip there, because you want people to be able to see it from 2 feet away, right? When I first started painting miniatures, I never went with I wasn't aware of the concept of, well, you should paint something so that it looks good from, tabletop good. So all my painting was meticulous and close, and you would literally need to pick up my models and look closely at them to see what it is that I had painted. And I saw these other people, these armies that looked really good, and I was like, but my painting is better than theirs. But what they were doing that I wasn't doing was they were painting for the tabletop, right? I was painting for the hand. And I think that it probably took me up until the point I was living with Ash Barker, that may be one of the things that he sort of imparted on me was, you can paint it the way that he painted. If you looked at his stuff, he painted for the tabletop, right? And especially once, and I think that I sort of showed him, well, you don't have to just paint for the tabletop. You can paint for 6 inches away from your face, which is what I sort of grew up doing. So there we go. So there she is. You know what? I'm going to do that skull. And you can hear them. I hope you can hear him digging and chuffing around out there. So I'm just doing the skull now. So you can see I'm adding some of my lighter color to the top of the skull, and then I'll add a little bit on the cheeks here, on the cheekbones, where the cheekbones are basically the orbital bone around the eye, and then across the bottom here. And I got the nose as well. Because again, you're trying to pick it out so that it stands out. And then the back here, I'm just going to go across the top because that's sort of where the reflection or where the light part of the skeleton will be. We'll leave it at that. And then on the front here, I think I'm just going to drop a tiny bit more on the top there. And the idea is that this is a little skull. It's a little skull, so I don't know whose skull it is. Maybe it's a... Whenever I see small skulls on things, I go, man, there's a lot of child skulls in Warhammer. Maybe that's where all the children in the 40k universe are. They're all skulls. Oh, it's dreadful. But apt for 40k. All right, so the only things I have left to do is the little plume thing on the back here needs to be finished off. And I need to put a red dot or whatever her bionic eye is going to be. I don't know, what color should her bionic eye be? Could be red. I think the last one was red. Regardless, now that they've started hammering out there, we're past 1 p.m. I was hoping to do these. I'm hoping to do these streams longer. I think that once I get up and rolling, and I've got projects in mind, and I've got talking points in mind. Like today, I wanted to show you my old Escher, paint some Escher. I can show you what came in the mail today, which is kind of exciting. I'll give you a little sneak of it. I'm just going to put it down here and then switch to overhead. Oh, what is that? Well, if you know what that is, then you know what I'll be painting next month. Next month is a special month. It is the month of Orktober, which is a month-long celebration for people like me. It is our month. You can't take that month away from us. So these Escher will be done in next week. I'll be working on more Escher, so I'm going to try and start putting paint on the other girls here. So Enkindu here, the daughter of Synthesis, and the rest of the gangers that I have to have painted, because I want to get those painted, because as I was saying yesterday, I've got Necromunda terrain to paint, which is over my shoulder here, sitting on the shelf waiting to be painted. I went down to Canadian Tire today, which is the local hardware mega store in Canada, and they sell more than just tires. So I went down there and picked up some more primer that I needed to finish off my priming of the terrain. And then I'm going to do a project log, probably a project blog. I don't know if I'm going to videotape too much of it, but I'm definitely going to photograph a lot of the work in progress on painting that Necromunda terrain up and getting it ready for the table, so that come time for our campaign to start, I will have a fully painted Sector Mechanicus table. And the next table I want to do for Necromunda is Ash Wastes, because I have some pieces that I think will work really well out in the shanty towns and the ash wastes that surround the hives, and hopefully that will coincide with the House of Iron, who, if you've seen that new fort, I can't remember what it's called, something Stronghold, I think it's just called the Stronghold. It's a new piece of terrain that GW's putting out that looks pretty awesome. And you can siege forts, and sieging forts is awesome in any game. So I'm going to sign off there and listen to see what were they playing. Lou Reed. Anyways, because of all the noise and because of the construction, I can literally see a guy wearing a yellow vest standing 3 feet away from me on the other side of this glass. So they're going to be ramping up construction. I guess their lunch break is over. Not that they don't seem to work through their lunch break, but I guess this means that my lunch break is over. So I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the lunch break today. I'll be back on Monday, same bat time, same bat channel. And yeah, I'm not going to use the sign-off that I used yesterday because I've decided to go with something a little bit more family appropriate. So I guess the Batman sign-off will have to be it, and I'll come up with something less plagiaristic in the future. So, anyways, this is Christian for the Eternal Chronicles signing off. Hope you enjoyed whatever it was that I just did for the last hour, and I'll see you Monday at the same time, same bad channel.